So, have you ever just been scrolling, minding your own business, and you stumble across something online that completely chills you to the bone, right? We've all been there. The internet is literally a breeding ground for these wild urban legends. And the crazy thing is sometimes all it takes is one strangely edited clip or some bizarre website totally stripped of its original context to spark a massive global panic. Like, before we even know what's hitting us, thousands of people are utterly convinced they've uncovered a secret cult, a vast government conspiracy, or, something even darker. But as we're going to dive into in today's explainer, things are rarely what they seem on the surface.
Which brings us to a really fascinating question. What if the internet's absolute scariest monsters were actually just highly creative artists? Honestly, it's a wild thought. Today, we're totally shifting gears. We're moving away from genuine threats and looking squarely at the deceptive, kind of brilliant nature of digital storytelling. We're going to dig into some of the most terrifying viral panics in internet history and unmask the surprisingly creative and, spoiler alert, completely harmless reality behind the whole shebang.
Okay, to do this properly, we've got a very specific investigative framework we're going to use to logically deconstruct these famous digital legends together. It's pretty simple. Step 1 is the hook. That's the initial scare, the thing that grabs everyone's attention. Step 2 is the theory. This is the mystery phase, that totally chaotic period where the internet tries to solve the puzzle and, let's be real, usually assumes the absolute worst. And finally, step 3 is the reveal. That's where solid logic steps in, and we uncover the actual, factual truth.
All right, let's jump right in. Case study 1, the Plague Doctor.
Picture this. It's 2015, and a writer for a Swedish tech blog opens this totally unmarked package. Inside, just a plain disc, but when they played it, well, it revealed a grainy black and white video labeled with this super cryptic code 11BX1371, and boom, our hook was officially set. The contents were frankly deeply unsettling. It showed this figure dressed in a full-on plague doctor outfit just standing completely silent inside what looked like a ruined, abandoned building. The figure's hand was flickering with a light, tapping out what looked like Morse code. Oh, and the audio? It was this painful, buzzing static that literally hurt your ears. Honestly, it was a total masterclass in building a terrifying atmosphere. Naturally, the internet did what the internet does, and the video went massively viral, plunging us right into our theory phase. You had these dedicated online sleuths running the video's audio through spectrograms, which, by the way, is just software that turns sound waves into visual pictures. And what they decoded? It seemed to absolutely validate the public's worst nightmares. I'm talking hidden pictures of skulls buried deep in the audio frequencies. They uncovered GPS coordinates pointing directly to the White House. They even deciphered hidden messages that seemed to be direct, immediate threats against the President of the United States. No way, right? It was wild. So the internet absolutely exploded with panic. People were genuinely terrified. Was this a warning of a biological attack from some terrorist group? Was it a serial killer taunting the authorities? It felt like a real-life horror movie. But then, logic stepped in. Investigators methodically, painstakingly analyzed the footage frame by frame. Eventually, they successfully tracked the filming location to an actual abandoned mental asylum in Poland. And just like that, the mystical terror started to get grounded in reality.
And guys, here is the ultimate punchline. Shortly after that location was identified, a man named Parker Warner Wright stepped forward on social media. He wasn't a terrorist, he wasn't some criminal mastermind, he was an artist. And to completely prove his claim, he actually showed the public the exact handmade plague doctor mask he had constructed from scratch for the video. That entire insane global panic? It was sparked by nothing more than a deeply misunderstood, very personal art project.
Moving right along to case study 2, the haunted game.
Okay, so jump forward to 2017. This mysterious YouTube user who just goes by Paul starts uploading footage of an unreleased 1997 PlayStation game called Petscop. Now, at first glance, it looked exactly like this innocent, maybe a little clunky pet-catching simulator from the late 90s. But then Paul enters the secret cheat code, and the whole cheerful vibe just vanishes. The game suddenly transforms into this dark, sprawling underground maze. It was packed with incredibly creepy messages and, honestly, most disturbingly, what seemed to be references to real-life crimes involving missing children. Talk about an incredibly effective hook. Now the theory phase for Petscop, it didn't just blow over in a few weeks. It dragged on for over 2 terrifying years. Because the game felt so authentically vintage, and those dark references felt so chillingly real, viewers became utterly convinced of 2 main theories. Theory 1. Petscop was an actual confession tool created by a real criminal who had hidden his dark secrets deep within the game's code back in 1997. Or, Theory 2, which is almost scarier, Paul, the player, was a real victim in actual danger, and he was using these weird YouTube uploads as a secret, desperate cry for help.
The tension was just unbearable for the thousands of people following this mystery. But finally, in 2019, the veil was lifted. A massive collective sigh of relief pretty much washed over the entire internet when a guy named Tony Domenico finally stepped forward.
Think about it. People had spent 2 solid years genuinely terrified they were watching a real criminal's hidden confession play out in real time. But the reality, Petscop was never an actual game from 1997. It wasn't even on the PlayStation. The whole thing was just this meticulously crafted, vintage-style animation.
It was, in its absolute entirety, a massive fictional storytelling project. Tony had painstakingly animated every single frame to make it look perfectly like a retro console game. And the kicker? He had actually been playing the character of Paul the entire time. He acted as the confused gamer to brilliantly build up that viral mystery and totally immerse the audience in his horror story. Honestly, the guy was simply a phenomenal digital storyteller.
All right, that brings us to case study 3, the creepy countdown.
Now, this final hook is an absolute masterpiece when it comes to building tension. For literally years, there was this YouTube channel called Pronunciation Book, and all it did was upload these incredibly simple, overwhelmingly boring videos teaching people how to pronounce everyday words, just mundane stuff. But then in 2013, the channel suddenly snapped. It kicked off this strict 77-day countdown. That boring, robotic pronunciation voice was entirely replaced by something super ominous, uttering these really dark, confusing phrases like, "Everyone is ready for a storm." And if you listen closely in the background, you could hear the horrifying sounds of police sirens and crackling fire. I mean, it was incredibly jarring. Talk about a pivot.
As you can guess, the theory phase here was pure, unadulterated panic. The shift was so sudden and so incredibly dark that the main theory going around was a total hacker takeover. Viewers were convinced that this innocent little educational channel had been compromised by some really malicious actors. But it gets crazier. Others went even further, theorizing that the channel had actually always been a front, and now it was being used by secret agents, or maybe a sleeper cell to broadcast coded messages to one another, hidden in plain sight.
So the internet is basically holding its breath as this countdown slowly ticks down to 0. Everyone is bracing for a global cyber attack or some crazy deep web spy mission to be revealed. But instead, when day 0 finally arrived, what did they get? An advertisement? Yep, an ad for a brand new interactive video game.
The entire channel, I'm talking years and years of deliberately boring, repetitive pronunciation videos, was actually just a giant performance art project created by 2 internet artists. They had meticulously built up this incredibly boring, highly trusted reputation over a massive amount of time, just so they could pull off this highly creative, tension-filled marketing stunt. And you know what? It completely worked. They got absolutely everyone's attention for their new game.
So let's wrap this up with our conclusion: the truth behind the terror. So why exactly did these projects work so incredibly well on us? It really boils down to one thing: a severe lack of context. Think about it. The terrifying plague doctor of 11BX1371. That was just a personal art piece with a cool handmade mask. The haunted crime-solving game of Petscop? Pure brilliant fictional storytelling. And that apocalyptic countdown from Pronunciation Book? Just an elaborate long-con brand marketing campaign. See, when you strip away the artist statement, or take away the gallery wall, or lose the marketing press release, highly creative digital storytelling very easily morphs right into viral panic. The monsters we fear online are, more often than not, just highly creative artists testing the absolute boundaries of the internet. Which leaves us with this final, kind of exciting question. What will the next terrifying internet mystery actually turn out to be? As you're browsing the web and you inevitably encounter the bizarre, the creepy, or the just plain unexplained, I really encourage you to maintain your skepticism. Don't jump straight to ghosts or massive government conspiracies. In fact, if you love this kind of logical puzzle, consider joining some sleuthing communities, like the ones on Discord. Get in there, help vet the footage, decode the text, and be part of the team that solves the next great digital legend. Because the truth really is out there, and honestly, it's usually way more fascinating than the fiction. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and hey, keep your eyes open.